As a content creator with a tendency to sometimes address more controversial topics, it's only natural that a lot of the time I get people disagreeing with me. A lot of the time when I see a comment that just says something along the lines of, "You're wrong," I ask the person who left it what makes them feel that way. Although I didn't really feel the need to do it with this specific comment. Like, people who have seen a lot of my videos, can you even guess which of my videos could possibly provoke this reaction from someone? A lot of the time when I ask people to elaborate on their disagreement, it leads to an insightful discussion, one that leads us both down a road of trying to figure out why it is that our perspectives are so different. And in learning about someone else's perspective, I myself am able to grow and learn. That doesn't mean that I'll always immediately change my mind to side with the person disagreeing with me, but learning about someone else's perspective is always a valuable experience, unless it's Bill Maher's. And before we jump into the video proper, I would just like to commend anyone who reacts to a disagreement on the internet by explaining their own perspective in a mature, insightful, and respectful way. Today we're going to be looking at people who do not fucking do that. Today I'm going to be looking at some of the criticism I got on the video I made addressing Bill Maher's points about comic book fans. You don't have to have seen that video to get what's going on here, but it can't hurt. So without further ado, let's get into how people responded to my response to Bill Maher's response to the people's response to the work of Stanley. Rolls straight off the tongue. So for those unfamiliar with Bill Maher or his recent work, this is him on screen now. And this footage comes from a 5-minute clip of him saying that he thinks superhero fans are childish and need to grow up.
You can, if you want, like the exact same things you liked when you were 10. But if you do, you need to grow up.
In my video, I had 2 main points to make in response. The first being that while there totally is loads of family and child-oriented superhero media, there's also loads of adult-oriented superhero media. As time's gone on, the genre has only grown more and more diverse. And to claim that it's all child-oriented, as Bill does, is an incredibly reductive generalization at best. And the second point I made was that it's absolutely fine to like stuff that is childish. Having a healthy or even passionate appreciation of something that's intended for children or families doesn't make you a child. People can enjoy whatever makes them happy, and being comfortable enough in your own skin to openly express that isn't a sign of immaturity. Look in the mirror. No, seriously, you're a child. Grow up, get out of your parents' basement, and start to appreciate the adult world. It's fascinating news that comic book fans don't actually like anything intended for adults. I wasn't previously aware of that rule, but someday when you grow up, you'll watch this video and cringe, passive-aggressive smiley face. Get over yourself, it's a joke. Generic, typical SJW. Yeah, this is the video that comment was on. I don't understand either. Bill Maher is fucking funny and right. There's nothing profound or important about superhero movies. I'm new to this whole being triggered thing. Who do I contact to report that Bill Maher hurt my feelings? Oh, I'm sorry, man. Did my response to Bill hurt your feelings? And if in response to that you're thinking, no, my feelings aren't hurt at all, I just have a problem with the video, then well done. You've almost reached self-awareness. Well, comic books actually are for children. Bill is right. Black Panther is not a race relations thesis, and Avengers is just a movie series about people who are good at punching. A response to Bill Maher? I'm sure an early 20s nerd with big glasses and goofy ears that looks like he hasn't been to a gym in his entire life is really gonna prove him wrong. Bill's right. Stopping being so salty and grow up. You'll notice that most of these comments have one thing in common, and that's that none of them actually make an argument. They're all just saying, no, actually, you're wrong. And Bill is right. Oh, brilliant! Thanks for letting me know! I'll change my opinion accordingly. To be fair, a couple of them attempt to make arguments. There's this guy who says that a lot of comic books are intended for adolescents rather than adults, and there's definitely a discussion to be had there. I think there's some merit to that idea, and I'd totally have tried to have that discussion with him if he didn't insult me several times with his comment. There's also this one. I agree with everything you said in reverse, which is like the strangest way I've ever heard anyone say they disagree with something, but that's alright, let's move on. The only time I read a comic book is when I find them in the toilet at my workplace. Comic books have about 20 pages, about 8 of them are commercials, and some of them comes with 2 stories. That's great literature value right there. How didn't I think of that? I was sitting here doing the wrong thing by like looking at like some of the evidence and trying to come to a conclusion based on that, when what I should really have been looking at were the very limited selection of comics in this guy's work slew, which are all bad, which means all comics are bad. Brilliant! So I basically went through the whole comment section and didn't find anyone making arguments that were much more than, no, you're wrong, thing bad. So I finally decided to bite the bullet and ask one of these people why it is they believe what they believe. I picked this guy and replied to him asking if he had any arguments to back up his claim. This was a mistake. His first argument was definitely his best one, and goes like this. Reading comic books and trying to make them sound adult is like making out that you're a builder because you play with Lego. Comic books are childish. Just because you happen to enjoy them doesn't mean they aren't childish. That's nothing near the argument I made, but okay, let's carry on. I'm a grown man, but I'm reading a children's book because I happen to like the author's other books when I was a child. This doesn't mean the book isn't for children. I agree, that doesn't mean the book isn't for children. The medium, comic books, can have adult themes, but I could build a sex dungeon for my Lego people. That doesn't mean Lego isn't childish. Don't try to reason your way out of liking comic books. Embrace it. They're childish, just like the book I'm enjoying. It's an interesting perspective, but I definitely don't agree with it. The childishness or target audience of a work definitely isn't defined by its medium. Just because plenty of comic books and comic book movies are childish doesn't mean they all are. No one in their right mind would call Logan, The Dark Knight, or Chronicle childish films. What Bill is doing when he says stuff like,
"Comics are for kids,"
is being reductive. There's nothing inherently childish about using pictures to tell a story, even if it is a device often used for children. Target audience isn't defined by medium. You can say the same about any medium that's outgrown its original target audience. Cartoons, for example, is traditionally a kids medium, but as time has marched on, they've become more and more diverse and been made for lots of different target audiences. Now, if someone were to say that you're childish because you're watching cartoons and cartoons are for kids, you'd just be like, no, though. Kids' cartoons are for kids, yeah. Not all of them, though. Target audience isn't defined by medium. Or if we take it back to your example of Lego, which is a bit different because it's a toy before it's a medium, really. Nathan Sawaya is an artist who uses Lego to create sculptures. Just like many comics, just like many cartoons, his work has gone past the traditional use of his medium. Does this look like stuff that was made just for kids? To call his work childish would be reductive. Or take, for example, the Lego Rule 34 page, which I had to check exists. You could call it a lot of things, like weird, creepy, and disturbing, but childish wouldn't really be one of them. Target audience isn't defined by medium. So I responded to that guy, Sandcastle I believe his name is, with those ideas to see what he would have to say in response. I built a sex dungeon out of Lego, therefore Lego is for men. Still sounding like a salty child. So, the distinction Sandcastle is missing here is that Lego isn't primarily a medium, it's a toy first and foremost. People like Nathan Sawaya can use Lego as a medium, but in doing so they're transforming it from its intended purpose. Through their actions they're creating something more adult-oriented, but that doesn't mean the Lego itself was for adults. Lego is a product with an intended target audience, and this target audience is almost exclusively children. This is the reason that Lego is for children, because it's made for children. Comics, on the other hand, are different because they are a medium. There are comics being targeted directly at adults, without an artist needing to transform them in any way. You know, this wouldn't be the same as me building a sex dungeon out of my Legos. This would be the same as me buying a Lego set that's pre-prepared to make a sex dungeon, which you couldn't tell me was for kids. The comic books I'm talking about are already adult-oriented and already being marketed to adults. It's not like I'm buying children's comics, drawing some boobs on them and going, oh, now it's for adults! My response to Sandcastle kind of completely missing the point of my argument was to ask him if he thought the sculptures I linked him to were inherently childish simply because they were made of Lego. If he thought that to assess something we should ignore its content and focus on its medium. Yes! Go to Legoland, then go to the V&A. Stop being such a child. I just watched the tail end of the Thunderbirds movie. Must mean Thunderbirds are for men. Okay, you keep saying, oh, I like it, that means it must be for men. As if that's something I've said or would ever say. I'm not saying that I like it and I'm an adult, therefore it must be for adults. I'm saying that it's for adults because it's being made explicitly for and marketed towards adults. You damp carrot. Between the last jump cut and now, I've given it some serious thought and I've decided to refer to this guy as damp carrot for the rest of the video. Anyway, I came back to this with, so you're openly admitting that you think to assess something we should ignore its actual content? You can think that if you want, no one's stopping you, but forgive me if I don't take your ideas seriously. I'm gonna continue assessing things by what's actually in them rather than their superficial elements. You can, if you want, continue to focus on the superficial while claiming other people are being salty and childish. To which he replies with, no, I'm telling you comic books are childish, because they are. Hey look, that's like his whole argument. If you can't handle it, then that's your problem. Oh no! I responded to him by saying that comic books are childish because they are is a great summary of his arguments so far. And then I bring up stuff like cartoons. But we don't have to pay any attention to that because he literally only responds to the first sentence of this. He just fucking ignores the rest of it. In response, Stamp Carrot says, it's a better argument than I like comic books and they aren't childish. And you know what, I'm in full agreement. I do think that's a worse argument, which is probably why I never made that argument. Give a child a comic book or give them War and Peace. See which they prefer. Yeah, man, give a child War and Peace or give them a pizza. Which one do you think they'll prefer? Does that mean pizzas are for children, or does it just mean that a lot of children like pizza? Ask a child if they'd rather go play football or attend a lecture on thermodynamics. Does that mean that football is just for kids? Or adapt War and Peace into a comic book? Do you think a child would like it then? Or is it maybe the content of something that matters rather than the more superficial elements? I imagine that a lot of children, if forced to choose between War and Peace, the original, and War and Peace, the comic book adaptation, a lot of kids would pick the comic book adaptation. But again, kids preferring something doesn't mean it's exclusively for kids. And just to make it clear, no, I'm not saying comic books are for adults. They're not exclusively for anyone. It's a diverse medium. Look, you've obviously got your identity tied up in comic books, and that's really pathetic. You should grow up. But like I've blatantly pointed out, you can grow up and still enjoy something childish. Really, man, can you grow up and still like something childish? I was previously unaware of that. Thank you for pointing it out to me. It's not like for half of the video that we're currently in the comment section of, I literally say that exact thing. So I'm glad you could come here and tell me that. Abandoning what you've loved since you were a child because you're worried it's going to make you look childish isn't a part of being an adult. It's a part of being insecure. If for a second we assume that all superhero media is for kids despite the fact that it isn't, then having the capacity to enjoy it doesn't make you immature, and anyone who says it does can fuck off. One of my favourite films of all time is The Iron Giant, a movie that's very clearly a kids' film. And my appreciation for that piece of media doesn't make me a child. Man, clearly I understand the distinction that you're trying very hard to tell me about. I understand the difference between media that's intended for kids that adults like, and media that's intended for adults. And I honestly don't understand how you could see my video and not realize I understand that. There's plenty of superhero media for kids, there's plenty for adults, and there's lots targeted at people of all ages. After in that comment he said that my argument had essentially just been, I like comics and they're for adults. It's a better argument than I like comic books and they aren't childish. I pointed out that actually I'd made quite a few more arguments than that in the hopes that I could get him to respond to one of them. I pointed out that I'd referenced evidence and used analogies. He came back to me with, being pretentious is not evidence. I agree, mate. I agree. To be fair, that's not to say I'm not pretentious. I know I am sometimes. I'm working on it, though, I promise. It's just, you know, I have evidence as well. But that's besides the point, because I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, please let me know, and also if you haven't. I know it's been something a little bit different. Before I go, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to my patrons. Although, to be fair, I'm pretty sure a child would rather accept free money than read War and Peace, so maybe it's childish. I'll see you on Sunday for a Sunday video. Goodbye.